Kevin, thank you very much. Excellent presentation, and always wonderful to hear any reference to Battlestar Galactica. I'll give you a little personal connection I have with Battlestar. I know there are many fans in the audience. I actually know Dr. Gaius Baltar. Yeah, not him, the actual actor. And he's as bad as he is on that program in real life. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. For our final speaker today, because this is our final speaker, we welcome the longtime editor of Industrial Distribution magazine, a well-known, much-loved publication. And if you think about it, after so much change in the industry and so many examples of the best and the worst, he's got some great stories to share. So please now welcome to the stage, Jack Keough. Welcome. All right, enjoy the
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here. I really wanted to thank Adam, Mark, and the rest of the Hybris team for making this go so smoothly. That includes the production staff, of course, because I've had the benefit of having a good crew, and I've had the benefit of not having such a good crew. If I can just share one experience that I had not too long ago, and it's reflective of what happens when you don't have a good crew. A company in Philadelphia, a manufacturer, asked if I would make a presentation to their international sales meeting. I said, of course. And he was the vice president of marketing, and he said, the only problem is on a Sunday. I said, okay. And he said, I'll send some tickets to you, and I'll have a car waiting for you at the airport. I said, terrific. Get the tickets, and I look at it. It's 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's a luncheon meeting. Get on the plane at Logan. You can tell I might have a slight Boston accent. And I get on the plane, and I get off in Philadelphia, and there's a car waiting. Terrific. We drive out to the plant, pushes his car in the security gate, and we go in. And he drops me off in front of this corporate building, and he says, that's where you're making the presentation. I went in. I tried to get in, knocked at the door. There's no one there. There's no cars around. I'm thinking, this is pretty strange. So I went over toward the second building, and as I'm going toward a second building, I can see the wind picking up. It's starting to howl a little bit. Clouds moving in. It was not a good sign. I had a suit on. I started looking in the distance. I can see a security guard shack. So I said, I better get over there. And I started walking pretty quickly. Now it's really looks like it's coming down. It's starting to mist. So now I get into a trot, which for me was a good experience. But finally, I got within 100 yards of the security guard shack, and the rain just comes down. I mean, buckets. I'm soaked. Rain is streaming down off me. My suit's soaked. I get to the door of the security guard shack. I burst in, and an 80-year-old security guard is sitting there, and he says, who are you? What do you want? The table is strewn with coffee cups and the Philadelphia Inquirer sports page. I said, I'm Jack Keough. I'm with Industrial Distribution magazine, and I'm here to make a speech. Without blinking an eye, he says, okay, I'll listen, but make it short. Well, what happened, there was an obvious mix-up between the marketing department, the secretary, and I ended up learning a lot about security work, and hopefully he learned something about distribution. The meeting wasn't until that night. Well, today I'm going to make it short and sweet. For the past day and a half, you've heard a lot about B2C, B2B, etc. I'm going to talk about distribution. So something that I've studied for the past 30 years and something I have a passion for. So I hope you'll bear with me while I talk about some of the major players in the distribution channel, what they're doing, both e-commerce-wise and other ways, and also some of the challenges that the independent distributor is facing, causing many to go out of business. And then let's talk a little bit about what's happening with e-commerce and the internet. One of my favorite philosophers, other than Yogi Berra, is Mark Twain. And Mark Twain, as you know, said the reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. That was in regards to the New York Journal printing his obituary. Unfortunately, Mr. Twain was still alive when it happened. But that can really be applied to distribution, because I have heard so many times, this is going to be the death knell for distributors. We've gone back, and I'll give you just some examples. Gemmams. I don't think anyone's around to remember Gemmams, or maybe they are in this audience. But in the 1960s, General Electric decided, you know, we're paying our distributors too much money. We can do just as good a job and get a better return on our investment. Well, they rolled out this plan, a form of captive distribution, in which their distributors, or their captive distributors, would service their plastics plants. Didn't work. Didn't work because manufacturing and distribution are two different animals. They understood how to make product. They didn't understand how distribution worked. Then there was, well, it started with blanket orders, number of blanket orders, and then it went to systems contract, a family of products being bought by a customer. Then we went to integrated supply. And a lot of people felt the small to mid-sized distributor was going to be squeezed out unless they became a tier 2 or tier 3 distributor. That didn't happen either. And there's always the dangers of manufacturers selling direct. Well, it's a danger then, it is a danger today, and some distributors say this is going to kill them if manufacturers really develop a proper e-commerce program. And the internet, of course, everybody talked about the internet and how it was going to disintermediate distributors. Well, that really hasn't happened. One famous speaker was on the circuit, convention circuit, predicting the demise of the outside salesperson because of the web. That didn't happen. In fact, today I think outside salespeople are more important than ever. And then there's e-commerce. E-commerce can be an effective tool for distributors. The problem is distributors are slow to adopt. Well, let's take a look at the market itself. Distribution is an extremely fragmented business. There's hundreds and hundreds of small, medium-sized distributors in this country, probably actually several thousand when you think about it. They're having a really tough time in this environment, which we'll get into a little. But most of them are behind the time when it comes to technology. If you can believe it, about 10 years ago I visited a distributor, and his plan was to keep using his fax machines because he thought that was the latest innovation. They're very slow to look at things. And in fact, in 1995, roughly, I visited a distributor who was still operating with a Cardex system. Now, a lot of you say, what is a Cardex system? It's a form of inventory management. But it's been very slow to adopt. Well, who are these new mega distributors, as we call them? Well, you can see there's Grainger. Grainger is about a as you heard this week, between a $9 and a $10 billion distributor. 1/3 of their revenue now comes via e-commerce. In 1991, when Grainger decided to enter the arena of e-commerce, they were laughed at by many CEOs. They felt you're never going to get a return on their money. It was a waste of time. And a lot of, frankly, used the word that was used here yesterday, fad. Well, Grainger, to its credit, really developed an excellent e-commerce plan that's the envy of the industry. They spent a lot of money, but it's paid off. And then there's Fastenal. Fastenal is, many of you know, it started out that was selling fasteners, bolts, nuts, that type of thing. Well, it changed, and now today it sells all types of construction material, but it also sells to manufacturers, has a great e-commerce site. It's going to be improved, actually. And it was started by Bob Keough, who, frankly, was once voted the cheapest CEO in North America, who's now giving away most of his fortune. MSC Industrial Supply, of course, has this large catalog. And they are really an excellent distributor. They have a few $billion in sales. About 40% of their sales now comes via e-commerce. And they're doing an extremely great job at it. And they made one of the biggest purchases that we've seen in the past year or so in distribution when they bought Barnes Distribution of North America. And Motion Industries. Motion Industries is really a well-known company. It's a division of Genuine Parts Company. And they're doing their website over again. And they're going to come out with an excellent program this year. One of the most interesting companies is Command Industrial Technologies. Command Industrial, is everybody familiar with that company? Command Industrial is a division of the Command Corporation. And Command Industrial Technologies has a great basis for future growth. What they did last year was bought a company called Zell Automation. Excuse me, I thought it was a little dry. Zell Automation. And what they've done is they bought two other companies, Florida Bearings, and they've also bought another company which they've integrated into the whole system so they can offer a package to distribute to their customers. Airgas, 400 acquisitions in the past past several years, really going well. And they're also going to be expanding via acquisition in the next 2 years. DXP Enterprises is, thank you. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. DXP Enterprises cracked the $1 billion mark in sales this year. They've had 30 acquisitions in the past 10 years, and they're really growing, and they're going to continue to grow through acquisition. That's part of their corporate strategy. These companies are going to really perform the base of what many are going to see in the years ahead for what mega distributors are going to contribute to the channel. What is driving M&A? This is the big story. If you were to ask me, what's the biggest story in the past 30 years in distribution? Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. A little cold. What is driving M&A? As I started saying, the biggest story in the past 30 years in distribution, in my opinion, has been M&A. M&A has fueled charges of amazing companies coming together, and they're really developing it for the customer. And also retirement of owners. Many of the owners over the years of industrial distributors are having problems, excuse me, and so they're going to, sorry, throat is killing me up. But we're seeing a lot of billion-dollar distributorships over the next couple of years. There's a blurring lines of products that exist between these companies. It used to be that if you were an electrical distributor, you were a pure electrical distributor. That's no longer the case. What is happening is that the electrical distributor like Wesco, for example, has branched into other product groups and is expanding to make it a one-stop shopping experience for the customer. And that's very important because it's also, they have an excellent website that's going to create some stir in the industry. A lot of distributors are specialization by knowledge. And by that I mean distributors used to buy a company, get some employees and focus on them as technical specialists in a particular product area. Well, now what distributors are doing is they're actually buying companies. And that's a change in the whole philosophy of what distribution is. Well, let's take a look at these new competitors. Amazon Supply was started in April of 2012 with 14 product categories. It's an amazing company, Amazon, which I'll get into, but it's an outgrowth of a company that they bought in 2005 called Small Pots. They had 600,000 items when they first started this business. Amazon studied this Small Pots business for 7 years before making the leap in 2012. And they've already created a stir, and I'll go into that a little bit. They've even gone into the food business. You probably know Amazon Fresh. Amazon Fresh is a food delivery service that Amazon started in Seattle. It's now expanded into San Francisco. It's going into 2 other cities, and they're going to roll it out nationwide. They also even far ahead of the game by having Amazon 3D printing site. If you go into their site, you can find a selection of 3D printers. We're way ahead of the game on this. And frankly, 3D printing is a subject area I think that many of you should be familiar with in the future. Amazon Supply has about 90-plus warehouses and fulfillment centers. That's an amazing number, but they have 5 more. They're going to be completed before the end of this year. They're looking at locations in Tampa and outside Baltimore. What's amazing to me is that Amazon has cut down its time in building these supply centers to 10 months. They started out, it took 2 years to buy one of these mammoth, or to build one of these mammoth plants. Now it's down to 10 months. They bought a company a few years ago called Keough Systems. I don't know if you're familiar with Keough, but Keough is a robotics and design system that for the plant floor, for production and for delivery. Keough is going to change the way Amazon gets product out the door. How has it been accepted? Well, 45% of industrial buyers have bought from Amazon. 25% have bought frequently. Why? Because it's easy and convenient. Those are the two key words that come up time and time again when I talk to buyers about what's happening in distribution. And you're going to see distributors haven't reacted to Amazon. Frankly, I'm not sure why. Because I think what's happened is they don't want to invest the money and not get the quick return. But loyalty among buyers and their products are disappearing. By that, I'm referring to the fact that buyers now will look where they can get the product cheapest and fastest, and not necessarily loyalty to the supplier that's been delivering it. That's a change in what's happening in the industry over the years. I might put one other thing about Amazon. Some manufacturers might, in the room might say, well, gee, I've seen my products on Amazon, and yet I didn't authorize that. Well, what's happened with Amazon.com, not just AmazonSupply.com, is that third-party providers are getting the product cheaper through, quote, leaks in the supply chain, selling them as a third-party provider. Amazon goes along with that practice or just ignores some of it because 42% of its sales come from third-party providers rather than from the manufacturer on their site directly. It's created some problems, obviously. It's going to create additional problems. Now there's a new one. Is everybody familiar with the fact that Google has a shopping site for suppliers? Well, I invite you to take a look at this. Go into your internet and look at Google Shopping for Suppliers. It started, well, it's an outgrowth of what they had called Google Shopping. Everyone's familiar with that. Well, they decided to take this a step further, go after the important B2B market, which is obviously, as you heard today, is double the size of what the B2C market is. It was started earlier this year. Actually, it rolled out in January, but it actually began in February as a beta site. You can still see it as a beta site. They began with electrical and electronic supplies. They've expanded into mechanical components, and just last month. And really, when I refer to mechanical components, it's bearings, power transmission, it's clutches, gears, brakes, those type of products. I don't know what's happening as far as acceptance of it, but I do know from talking to people they're going to be expanding into a number of different product groups in the next few months. They are determined to really make a big entry into this market. They have what they call a verified supplier program for manufacturers. And right now, if you want to become a supplier in one of those product groups, you don't have to pay to be a verified supplier. You get a patch that's put above on the web supplier site, which indicates that you have been indeed verified by Google, and you're higher up on the search engine when somebody types in a word like bearing. But what's going to happen is next year they're going to start charging those manufacturers for those products. Google, I think, is a sleeper in this industry as far as web presence. It really is anxious to compete against Amazon, and they have the capital, they have the ability to do it. Well, let's take a look at some of the future challenges that we're seeing in the industry. Well, first of all, you know about eBay. They're already there. They have different different stores on their site. But one company that's going to be entering the industrial market very shortly is Staples. I talked to some people from Staples, and they're determined to make this one of their primary markets. Well, how did that start out? It's interesting. Staples in 1998, bought a company called Quill.com, which was another office supply dealer. They integrated some of their e-commerce applications from Quill into their own operation. In addition, Quill has some outstanding telemarketing capabilities. So they're combining this into one company, and it's really going to be effective if they decide to go the industrial route. As some of you may know, Staples is billing itself as the second largest e-retailer in the world. I didn't know that until I saw some numbers. But I think Staples, as I said, is definitely going to become in this market very shortly. And what about Walmart? Walmart, and again, as was pointed out here recently, is that a lot of their products, when you order online, is stocked, stacked, and shipped and delivered from your local Walmart operation. But they've changed that approach just a little bit. For example, what they're doing now is they're building 2 distribution centers, one in Fort Worth, Texas, and the other in Pennsylvania. And they're going to be using that as a distribution center and as a hub for shipping and receiving. And I think this means they're going to be actually looking at that market in the distribution sector, especially in industrial. Lowe's is an interesting company. I don't know if you realize, but just a couple of months ago, they bought a company called Orchid Supply. Orchid Supply Hardware is headquartered in California, but also has operations in Oregon. Interesting company. There's quite a chain of hardware stores. I think what Lowe's is going to end up doing is using Orchid to possibly go into the industrial market. It's no different from what Home Depot did years ago when Home Depot started Home Depot Supply. Home Depot Supply is an excellent company. As you know, it just spun off in its IPO. Stock has done fairly well. Home Depot still owns 12.5% of that, with the remainder owned by some private equity firms. What's really interesting is that private equity firms on Wall Street really have found distribution. There isn't a month that goes by where I don't hear from some private equity investor or some banking firm who wants to know about companies for sale and distribution. It's a good market, and the reason they're so interested in it is that distribution is a mature, solid market with steady returns. It's not going to give you the glamorous returns of some software companies, etc., but it does provide a stable environment for capital. And I think that's what's going to be happening in that market. M&A is only going to increase in this industry, and the outlook for the independent distributor is really cloudy right now. In fact, there's a lot of pressure being put on independents, as I just said, particularly from national contracts. It's ironic, but local and regional buyers still would prefer to buy their products from the guy down the street. But that's not happening because of these national contracts, which the big chains have really done a great job in introducing throughout the country. There's not enough capital for some of the small independents. They can't go out and buy 100 vending machines like Fastenal was able to do because of their capital. And basically what's happening is a lot of companies are looking for one-stop shopping. And that one-stop shopping are for companies like Wesco. Wesco, as I mentioned earlier, which was a pure electrical distributor, now has a whole integration by buying other companies such as Connie Safety Products and some others, putting them together and allowing their customers to be just able to buy all those products at one location. These growth of the mega chains is only going to continue. You're going to be some others. I think what you're going to also see is possibly one of the big challenges I mentioned earlier, like Amazon or whomever, actually buying a large distributor. You are definitely going to see large distributors being bought out by each other. In fact, there's talk of that now. If you take a look at what's happening in the national scene, you can just take a snapshot of Omaha, Nebraska. Omaha, Nebraska has a lot of business in the center of that city, a lot of industry. But there were some really good distributors there, like companies like Fuchs Machinery and companies like Midwest Industrial Tool. Both have been bought out in the past few years, meaning that there's only really one large independent distributor in that city, and that is John Fonda's company. And I don't know how long they can continue and with this pressure being put on by some of the chains that are starting to come into the area. One of the quotes given to me by one of my friends who's a distributor out that way said, "This is the toughest time I've ever had in business." And it's only going to get tougher. You know, the real thing distributors have to do is embrace e-commerce by, in some cases, for smaller guys specializing. And by specializing, I'm referring to the fact that that distributor becomes an integral part of the company's operation by providing technical expertise, not just product. Distributors long, long ago have stopped being product providers. Instead, they're solution providers. And that's what should be kept in mind. You're not selling a product, you're selling your expertise. You're getting paid for what you know. The knowledge that you possess can't be put into financial dollars, but it can be put into your approach by bundling and unbundling your services so that the buyer actually sees the services that you're performing. Buyers don't realize sometimes all the little things that you do as a distributor to make sure that that product is delivered on time and you don't have a downtime within your plant or facility. If I could offer one tip, before we get into even mentioning e-commerce, redesigning websites. As I look through distributors' websites, as I do every day, it amazes me some of the content hasn't been updated. I'll give you a quick example. One of the largest power transmission distributors in the country, very well known. They haven't updated their websites since 2010. The content isn't fresh. Their search capabilities are terrible. And this is borne out by the fact that Hybris did an audit of the electrical distribution market. They looked at 400 electrical distributors and 200 electrical distributors and found that 40% of them, their websites, were ineffective in delivering e-commerce capabilities. That's an amazing statistic when you think about it. So if I can offer just a couple of quick tips on redesigning a website, make sure, and this is the problem going on the second day of a meeting, because some of the tips you may have heard before, but one is really knowing your customer and what they're buying. You have to look at your site as a marketing tool, not just as a place where you stack products on and you hope people are going to come to it. Originally, when websites were designed, it was with the anticipation, well, this will be a panacea. Everyone will come to my site, buy their products, and all will be well. That isn't the case. You really have to use video on your site. That will drive, I can guarantee you, will drive up your traffic. You've got a chat function. You should be using that. And you frequently ask questions. And really your featured products should be there. And you should be working with your manufacturers in developing a proper format to deliver it. You also should be developing e-commerce. As part of that web redesign, you should be using your e-commerce platform provider system within it to make sure that both operate effectively. And you know, a lot in choosing an e-commerce platform provider is a lot like what happened years ago. Remember when everybody said, well, I need a new software program. So you go out, get a software program, and you don't take full advantages of all the applications that are involved in it. Instead, you just look at it and say, okay, it does this, but there were other things involved. That's what you have to do and develop that e-commerce system. I want to thank you all for putting up with me in my throat here. I have a slight cold, my apologies. But I've been talking for just about 30 minutes now, and you know, studies have shown that if you talk more than 30 minutes, 20% of the people will remember something you said, 20% will be thinking about dinner, or gosh, that speaker really had a dry throat, or 60% will be engaged in some form of sexual fantasy. Never have I given so much pleasure to so many people in such a short time. Thank you very much. Sorry about the throat, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks very much.